Hello and welcome to the eOrganic webinar on organic farm financial benchmarks. My name is John McQueen. I'm a coordinator for the eOrganic project. eOrganic is the organic agriculture community of practice with e-extension. We are a community of cooperative extension service personnel, researchers, ag professionals, organic certifiers, and practitioners. You can find the recording of this webinar as well as articles, videos, and more by going to www.extension.org/organic_production. If you have a question for today's speaker at any time during the webinar, just type your question into the question box on your screen. We will go over these at the end of the presentation. I'd like to welcome today's speaker, Dale Nordquist. Dale's an extension economist and the Associate Director of the Center for Farm Financial Management at the University of Minnesota. His interests include farm business analysis, farm planning, and software development. In this webinar, Dale will describe the Minnesota Organic Farm Business Management Project and show 3 years' worth of results of organic farm financial performance in Minnesota. I'm going to turn it over to Dale.
Well, thanks, John. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dale Nordquist. I'm with the Center for Farm Financial Management. I've been with the center for actually 33 years now. Here in Minnesota, and most of that time concentrating on farm financial analysis, farm financial planning, and if some of you may have heard of our FinPack software, I've kind of worked on that software, kind of grown up with that software that was developed here at the University of Minnesota back in the 70s, and we've been using it and revising it and distributing it through our center here for ever since. Try to get my PowerPoint to advance here. There we go. So this afternoon, I'd like to talk a little bit about our organic farm business management project that we've been working on for about 3 years. We're going into our 4th year here now. And this is a project that is a little bit new and different to me. My experience, to be honest, I haven't worked that much with organic producers. I haven't been specializing in organic farm management at all up until this point. So this was a new project, new learning endeavor for me as well as most of the rest of us in our center, and also a lot of the educators that worked with the producers and are working currently with the producers on this project. We've been working with this now. I'm having some real slow response times here. We've been working on this to try to approach, give answers to some specific problems that organic producers in Minnesota were telling us that they faced. And a couple of the biggest problems that they identified were that from a financial standpoint, they really have had, there's financial benchmarks and financial information out there for conventional producers for them to compare to, but and of course it's not very useful for an organic producer to compare themselves to a conventional producer in a lot of respects. So there were no actual farm benchmarks available for them to compare to for organic producers in Minnesota, or really very limited benchmark information on organics across the whole country. And the other thing that was always a concern is a lack of information on financial results for organic producers. Really can limit the availability of credit to organic producers. We work with a lot of creditors. A lot of creditors in Minnesota have FinPack, and I know for a fact that they're very uncomfortable with any situation that's unusual any situation where they don't have a good handle on the financials, or any situation where the production practices aren't a lot of times what they're used to. So that does obviously impact organic producers in terms of getting credit. So they have access to a lot of the benchmark information that we have available on conventional producers in Minnesota, and this project made that kind of information available to Minnesota lenders on organics. The partners we've been working on, this project has a lot of partners involved, and I've listed several of them on this slide, including the organic organizations within the state of Minnesota and Sustainable Farming Association. So we've had a lot of involvement in this project from producer groups as well as several groups, other groups, which I want to spend a little bit more time talking about. First of all, the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, which have for a long time done farm business management education, and they're the largest farm business management education group of their kind in the country. There's 70 to 75 farm business management instructors in Minnesota, and those instructors work with very, very detailed, involved work with the farmers that are enrolled in their programs. And those instructors are part of the technical college program around the state, and they work with about 3,000 farms in the state of Minnesota. And the real focus of their programs is on farm financial management and accounting. So they work with, they have traditionally worked with conventional producers around the state and focused in on financial analysis, financial planning, working with them on record keeping and accounting, working on not so much the production practices, but more on the all parts of the management of the operation, including marketing and business planning, estate planning, all those kind of areas that revolve around management. So we've got a very strong program there, and each of those instructors works with very close to one-on-one with a lot of these producers. The second group is our center, the Center for Farm Financial Management here at the University of Minnesota. We're in the Department of Applied Economics. We've developed the FinPack software. We've also developed a database of this farm business management education data called FINBIN, and it's a website, www.finbin.umn.edu. And that website, as the farm business management educators do detailed financial analysis with producers at the end of the year, and they do whole farm analysis and enterprise analysis. When they put that all together, then we put that data in a database and make it available over the web in FinBin, so that anybody can go in, it's a wide open website, and anybody can go into FinBin and query that database for benchmark information. And so that's kind of the impetus for getting some organic data included in that database and make it possible to benchmark organics through that database. A couple other things we do the Ag Plan business planning software, which is now available over the web. So if you've got anybody who's looking to do business planning, which is more the narrative side of putting together a plan for the business, they can use the Ag Plan software. And we're also the hosts of the National Ag Risk Education Library here at the University of Minnesota. And then the other person I really want, and the group that I really want to recognize, Meg Moynihan is the project leader. She's actually the one who went out and got the funding for this project from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And I think Meg is on today, and if she is, I want to say hi to Meg. And she does the management on the project, and the way the project works is producers who want to enroll in our farm business management education programs through our technical colleges pay tuition for those classes. And this project provided funding to do scholarships for 80% of that tuition for the first year, 70%, and then 60% in the third year. And actually, we're going into our fourth year now, and some people, we're still at 60% for the fourth year of involvement. So that really encouraged a lot of organic producers around the state to get involved in this. I should say that the organic producers we're working with kind of fit into two groups. One of them is organic dairy producers, which we have quite a few of in the state, and the other group would be organic grain and row crop producers primarily. So we don't have a lot of organic fruit or vegetable producers in Minnesota, and we don't have a lot of them. Of those that do exist, not a lot of them have enrolled in this program. So most of the data I'm going to be showing you today is going to be from those two kinds of producers. And I will say that I'm going to show quite a bit of data here this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. And I apologize in advance for showing you so many numbers. I always say that I became an economist because I didn't have the personality to be an accountant. So I really kind of like these numbers, and you'll be seeing quite a few of them as we go forward here this morning. And then the fourth group is the Risk Management Agency, which provided the funding for the project that Meg went out and got. A little background on FinPAC. FinPAC is a comprehensive whole farm financial planning and analysis set of software. And these farm business management educators all have standalone FinPAC software, and they use it to do a detailed financial analysis of each producer they work with at the end of the year, including income statements and balance sheets and ratio analysis. And then they take it a step further, which is farther than most people go on this kind of activity, and they do full enterprise analysis of each crop, each livestock enterprise that the producer is involved in. So we get down to the seed cost per acre and the feed cost per cow level on each of the enterprises that they work with. So FinPAC starts with the farm records, and the producer has to have a pretty good set of accounting records to do this, a real good set of records. And to that we add the balance sheets for the beginning of the year, so we know where they're coming from. And with that, they can do a plan for the year, or they can do crop and livestock budgets and do a monthly cash flow plan, or a long-range plan to look at some alternatives for their farm. And if we add an ending balance sheet to that, we do an accrual analysis, and then we can put together the FINAN, the year-end analysis. And the year-end analysis is kind of the bellwether of what we're doing here, that the farm business management instructors work with farmers to do each year, and then they can trend that each year and show improvements or directions of the farm business. So to date, we've had 3 years of this project. Last year, we had 73 farms that were included in the analysis that had organic production. 46 of them were completely organic, and 27 of them had some part of or some fields in in their farm that were partially or totally organic. So farms had to be certified organic to be considered an organic farm here. We've published 3 years worth of organic farm performance reports that are available through the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and through our website here at the Center for Farm Financial Management. And this is the, oops, went too far. This is the kind of information we get when we put all this data together, and this is net farm income, average net farm income for all the farms in FINBIN since 1996. So this is conventional as well as organic farms, and you can kind of see the trend that we've been on the last few years. The last few years have been very, very profitable. This would be mostly conventional farms, and they've been very, very profitable for in particular, our cash crop producers in Minnesota, but also up until this last year for a lot of our livestock producers too. So you can see we've been on an upward trend, came down a little bit last year, but when we think about a net farm income of $140,000 for the average farm, that's very profitable, far more profitable than what we've seen in the past. And it's a little bit says a little bit something about organic farmers trying to compete or deciding to go organic when they're looking at the alternatives in conventional agriculture in the last couple of years. Now I'm sure we're going to see a big downtrend in that, or at least somewhat of a downtrend in that this year, primarily because of livestock. Livestock have been kind of a disaster financially this year for most producers. But crop production, our cash crop producers, again, had a very good year in 2009. The 2009 data is being put together right now, and it will be coming into our shop here in March, and we'll get it up in FINBIN in probably late March or early April. So if you're interested in looking at the organic results for this year, that's kind of the time frame we'll be on. So this is the comparison of conventional and organic farms for the whole farm numbers, and this is the average of the last 3 years. So we've averaged about 2,400 conventional farms, and averaged, if we just take the totally organic farms that we've worked with, we've had 45 organic farms, so a fairly small set, but still enough numbers so I think we get a pretty good feeling for what's going on out there. If you look down the numbers here, gross revenue, we're looking at quite a bit of difference in size here for the average conventional farm being a little over $500,000 gross. We usually use gross revenue as the measure of size of business, and less than half of that for organic producers. So that has some implications for the numbers we're going to see down the line here. Median net farm income, a little bit lower for organic producers, but still $50,000 is not, it's enough in most cases to support a family living or come darn close to supporting family living. So it's a fairly strong performance in terms of net farm income. And again, this $85,000 for conventional producers is pretty, we have not been that high historically in terms of the conventional net farm income. So organic producers didn't, considering the smaller size of business, didn't do too badly in terms of net farm income. And when we look at that based on rate of return on assets, which would be more size neutral, thinking about the kind of the interest rate that was earned on the money invested in the business, it's a little bit higher for conventional farms, but a 9.7% return on assets and almost a 13% return on equity in most years would be considered pretty outstanding. and it certainly is more than I'm earning in my savings account at the bank. So these, the average organic producer that's been involved in this program over the last 3 years has been pretty profitable. Most of these numbers, as we look down here, the conventional farmers' measures are a little bit stronger, but not, but still the organic producers are well within comfortable ranges on these ratios. Working capital, we like to see 25% of working capital as a percent of gross, so we're almost there. Debt to asset ratio is one place where organic producers are in a little better, stronger position than the conventional producers we worked with. And that probably has something to do with access to credit and how much credit organic producers tend to use. We see them using a little bit less credit. I guess we can't answer the question of why that is, whether it's because of lack of access or some other reason. One other measure I want to talk a little bit about is term debt coverage ratio. This is a measure that lenders will look at when they're looking at financing a business. And what this says is that the average organic producer generated $1.96 available to make payments for every dollar of payment that they had scheduled for the year. So they were almost generated twice as much cash available for making their payments as what they were supposed to make for the year. Still a little bit lower than the conventional producers, but well within comfortable ranges. Averages are always kind of dangerous, and I got to remind myself of that a lot of the time, that we look at all these averages and we think that everybody's out there doing that, and in reality, there's just tremendous range of results that producers are experiencing every year, and we really see that in the numbers we work with. This is the results for the conventional farms in our group, and remember there was about 2,500 of them, and so the middle group, the median of the middle group was $94,000 of earnings for the year, but the median of the lowest return 20%, the 20% that had the lowest net farm income, was loss of $33,000. So if you think about that, that's 500 farms out of that 2,500 farms that had a median loss of $33,000. We see that every year. It may not always be that high, but we see that every year that there's a group of producers that for some reason, either because of production problems or the prices in their commodity or whatever it might be, they have these tremendous ups and downs. And then, of course, on the other side of the scale, the high-income farms, which have tended to be getting bigger and bigger numbers there, and some farms that are kind of high-flying with 500 farms with a median of $436,000 of earnings. So certainly there's some farms in agriculture that have been making money. When we compare that to the organic producers, I look at those and I say, the organic producers we're working with are just like the conventional producers we're working with from a financial standpoint. They're smaller, so the ranges are a little bit different, but there's certainly a middle group that's doing well and making a substantial profit off of agriculture, and this was just in last year, just 2008's data. There's a group of them that did very well last year, and there's a group of them that struggled to make income in 2008, just like we see in the conventional farms. So, and I've been going around when I meet with groups of lenders and others and talk about this data, I try to make this point that the organic producers we're working with, they don't all make great profits, but they're certainly a group of them that are doing very well. And if you are a lender or anybody working with organic producers, you need to be analyzing those organic producers just the way you would a conventional producer and try to figure out which ones of them are set up to be profitable, and look at not organics as being something very different, but look at the management of that organic operation. And because obviously management is a key, we always see it as the key difference between these producers that are making strong profits and the ones that are struggling. If we look at that based on rate of return on assets, the same kind of spread. Again, this evens out the size of business a little bit, and you see very consistent different measures for organic and conventional farms. And remember I talked a little bit about term debt coverage ratio. If we compare those, again, very consistent, maybe a little bit less variation in organic producers that don't use quite as much credit, but I guess you'd have to struggle. We haven't done an analysis to see if there's any statistical difference there, but probably doesn't look like there would be any major statistical differences between the two groups. With FINBIN, we can go in and we can query these farms on a lot of different criteria. And I went in and pulled out the data for the organic farms by size of farm. And by size, we're looking at, again, gross farm income being the size indicators. So these would be, the smallest farms would be farms that produced gross income of less than $50,000, up to our largest group. We didn't have any organic, or at least there weren't enough farms that grossed over $1 million to be included. But the largest group that we have results for was farms that grossed $500 to $1 million. And so there are differences in the results for these producers as we look across the size groups. And again, this is very, very similar to what we would see for conventional farms. With farms that are grossing under $50,000, generally, probably part-time, very much part-time operators, generally have a lot of non-farm income. And at that size, there may just not be enough volume to show a lot of income from that operation. And so they tend to show very low returns. And if we start moving up that, even farms that are generating under $100,000 of gross income, again, probably part-time, most of their income is coming from non-farm income, and lower returns and lower contribution from the farm. But once we get up to a size of business, and this isn't this is a pretty wide range, but so can't really say that there's a specific cutoff here. But once you get up to a certain size of business, you start to stop seeing those big differences, and you still see differences in net farm income, and that's just because of size of business effects. But if you look at returns on assets, they're not that much different once you get up to a certain point. And in terms of debt payback ability, debt repayment ability, not much difference at all. The larger farms tend to not have the non-farm income, and the medium-sized farms generally do have, a lot of them still have some non-farm income too, so to contribute. So I would look at this data and say not all farms are wanting to get to be the biggest farm in the county, and certainly there's a lot of farms out there that are of middle size that are doing very well. But if you want to be a small producer and not have non-farm income to help you, it's going to probably be a struggle in a lot of cases. Another way we can look at this data is how much debt these operators use, and this is based on debt to asset ratio. So these producers had less than 20 cents of debt for every dollar of assets on the farm, up to the ones that have over 80 cents of debt. And you can see the differences there. There's pretty marked differences in terms of the income levels for producers that had the most debt. And so debt is going too far does bring on a lot of risk for not only organic producers but any producer. And once we get up over that 80% debt to asset ratio, it's even with a good rate of return on assets, it's a struggle to make a living. No matter how profitable you are, you just have too much debt dragging you down. So it's kind of interesting. The less than 20% debt group was lower, and we get up to those who use a little bit more debt, we're more profitable, and then it starts to bring income levels down again. And of course that affects the repayment capacity of the operation, which the lenders are going to look at. So debt definitely is can be used profitably, but it can be a high-risk choice if you go too far with it. We can also look at this data by type of farm, and this is the results for the crop producers in our group, and they've been pretty variable. The first year we worked with this group, the average net farm income for the organic crop farms was negligible, and we really thought, boy, what's going on here? How can these producers survive? But turns out that was just a poor production year for a lot of the organic farms in the state. It was a drought year in a big part of our state where there was a lot of organic production. And we turned that around in 2007 and 2008. Have been very profitable for the organic crop producers as well as conventional crop producers in the state. So they competed very well with conventional crop operations in the last 2 years. And that variability is still a concern, but overall they've been very profitable. And this is the kind of information we get on the enterprise analysis for these farms. This is soybeans on cash rented land, and I averaged it from 2006 to 2008 and just compared conventional operators with organic. You can't actually query these two and get them side by side in FINBIN. I had to pull out two different reports to put this together. But so the conventional soybean producers averaged 42 bushels per acre. They probably wouldn't be too happy with a 16 bushel yield per acre that the organic producers, and I kind of doubt that the organic producers were very happy about 16 bushels either. But when you combine that with an $18 price compared to $8, the gross revenues from those two groups of farms is pretty comparable, very comparable. Expenses over these 3 years, organic producers have had a little higher direct expenses on these crops. When we add up all the direct expenses, I just pulled out a couple of the expenses here, the seed and the chemical applications, and there's obviously other expenses here that would bring the direct expenses for organic producers to that level. Overhead costs a little bit higher for some reason on organic producers, and I can't really tell you why that is. But when we look at the total costs, and the total cost of production was $6.21 for conventional producers per bushel, and almost $15 for organic producers, that left organic producers with a little lower net return per acre than the conventional producers. But again, remember, this is an awfully good year, or an awful good set of years, profitable years for conventional row crop production in Minnesota. And the other group we have involved is the organic dairies, and I think there's, out of the 46 organic farms we had in our group, I think over 25 of them were dairies, I believe. And you can see the trend. Trend has been down a little bit in net farm income over these 3 years. Very profitable in the first year when prices were very strong, and have trended down a little bit in the last couple of years. But still, historically, pretty competitive numbers when we look at those against long-term history. And this is some summary numbers from our organic dairy producers. There were average of 25 organic dairies in these 3 years that I looked at here. And you can kind of compare again, gross return with 12,000 pounds of production per cow compared to 21 for the conventional. Gross return, even with the higher price, was a little bit lower, but substantially lower cost for the organic dairies. And feed cost was a little bit lower. All the other direct costs were quite a bit lower. A lot of that is labor, and the overhead costs were quite a bit lower for the organic dairies. So the net returns for organic dairies, even though they gross less, their net returns averaged actually higher than on a per cow basis than the conventional operators. Now, that may not line up with the comparison between the whole farm results and the organic producers, but a lot of that, the organic producers tend to be a little bit smaller in terms of the number of cows. And so when you look at the number of cows times these returns, the conventional farms still might, on a whole farm basis, show higher gross profits. So that's a summary of the financial numbers that we've seen, and you can go in and query those numbers yourself in FINBIN if you're interested. We did ask one of our instructors who's worked quite a bit with some of the organic producers in the program what the difference was between working with the organic producers and the conventional producers that they were working with. And his response was that educational content of what organic producers need from a farm management standpoint are very similar to what a conventional producer needs. They need all these topics of education, including financial measures and statements and record-keeping help and economic principles and all the same things that they provide for conventional producers. In terms of working with organic producers, difference in attitude, he said there's really next to no difference in attitude in working with these producers. And I think the farm business management educators who had worked a lot with conventional producers have been a little bit surprised that there hasn't been as much of a difference in attitude in terms of the goals of the organic producers they've worked with. Obviously, the organic producers have a different goal set than a lot of the conventional producers, but from a financial and a management standpoint, their goals have been very similar. The things that they're looking for might be looking for a little simpler life. They might be a little less enamored with buying a new tractor or having the newest of everything or the newest technology in every case. But in terms of wanting things for their farm and for their family, and their goals in terms of profits and those kind of things. They are interested in all those things. They're not interested in losing money. They're interested in making a profit from their operation and being successful. So they've noticed very little difference in attitude. And from an educational approach standpoint, his recommendation was you have to assume less and listen more. You have to be open to learning new production practices. And if you do those kind of things, it's a very enjoyable experience to work with a different type of agriculture that you may not be used to working with. Meg Moynihan did put together, did have an outside evaluator put together an interim evaluation of the project. So just a few things that we learned from that evaluation. Over 80% of the producers rated the experience either above average or excellent. So there's a lot of satisfaction with what we did in this project and what we're still doing in this project. They were most satisfied with the financial analysis they were getting, the help they were getting on accounting and record keeping, financial statements, taxes, so that's all the financial help that they were able to get in terms of putting their financial act together. And then outside advice, I think what they meant by that was somebody else to bounce some of their ideas off of, and somebody with a different set of experiences, and working with a lot of different farms to bounce those ideas off of. What they were least satisfied with was the cost of the program, which even as subsidized comes with a fairly high price tag, and so that was a little bit of an inhibitor. We have had some discussions that they were hoping to have more time with the instructor, and that's of course obviously limited by how much time the instructor has to work with all the different farms that they're working with. So maybe a little bit of an expectation that they would have more almost consulting time that's available for them, and that just hasn't been available in some cases. And of course the time and paperwork involved anytime you get into accounting and record keeping and working in any of these management areas, most producers would be rather be out producing than in the office doing those things. So that showed up in the evaluation. They did give high marks to our farm business management instructors, and they did say that participation made it easier to provide the information they needed for their lenders, in particular working with FSA and providing the historical information and the financial statement information that FSA requires. This project made that kind of fall right into place for them. And so I want to just, before I close here, I want to talk a little bit about the FINBIN database. If anybody's interested in actually going in and querying this information on their own, you have access here, and this is www, I guess it doesn't show here on this screen at all, but it's www.finbin.umn.edu. And the website lets you query whole farm reports, so there'll be a whole entity, income statements, balance sheets, ratio analysis, crop enterprise reports, and livestock enterprise reports. And if you jump in there, and this would be a crop enterprise report. There's 5 steps to generating a report out of FINBIN. And the first step is to select what report you want to look at. And here we selected an organic corn report. And then the location. And we have data in FINBIN from, I think, 8 states. But Minnesota is the largest, and Minnesota would be by far the largest in terms of how many organic farmers are included. So it defaults to Minnesota. You're probably going to have the best results if you either go in and select all the states or just limit it to Minnesota. And we can, within Minnesota, we can query that down to regions of the state if we want to. And then columns. Columns are really the sorts on the data. So if you want to look at the data historically, you select years. If you want to look at 1 year or a series of years and look at by size of enterprise or by profitability group or any of those different ways of sorting the data, this is where you really sort that down to get at the type of information you want. And the fourth item is to set up the criteria you want included in your query or the farm characteristics. In this case, for instance, under crop tenure type, we included just cash rent. We could have included owned and share rented land or all the land, but we queried that down a little bit. We included only 1 year's data. So this is where you'd select the kind of the criteria you want to limit your report to include. And then finally click to generate a report on that data. And it goes out and cranks through the numbers, and hopefully within a few seconds pops up a report on the data you're looking for. For the crop enterprise reports, we have created, and this is something we did specifically for this project, we created specific organic crops for the major crops that were on the farms that we're working with. So we've added crops to our crop list for organic corn, organic soybeans, organic wheat and barley, and the major crops that were being grown on the farms that are in the program. For whole farm and dairy, that's a little different. If you want to look at those reports, to get at the organic data, you have to come down to the bottom, and we've got these special sorts that the producers and the instructors tag on the farms so we can identify specific characteristics of the farms they're working with. And so if you want to look at just organic, you would pop into that and select only the organic farms from the special sort list. And it would be the same thing for a livestock report. There would be organic enterprise tags on that. And then go ahead and you generate that report. And one other kind of report we can benchmark. We talked a lot about benchmarking and availability of this data to help producers compare themselves to other farms. And the reports that I've talked about and shown data from so far have all been summary reports. The benchmark reports are a little bit different, and there's only enough data in the database on organic producers to do dairy benchmarks. But they look like this. When you get your report, it's a lot of data, but this allows a producer to come in here and compare themselves against the full range of milk sales for all the producers that are in the set. And this is just organic. We've got 75 organic farms over 3 years here. So they can compare themselves and see where they were in terms of milk sales, gross margin, total feed cost, and as they go down here, they can say, well, I was in the 70% group for milk sales, but I was in the 90% group in feed costs, so I've really been keeping my feed costs down. That's really good. Maybe I didn't have the highest production, but I did do it with low feed costs. So as they go down this list, they can kind of highlight where they are in each of these categories and benchmark themselves that way. And this is the kind of report that has been most popular with the producers in our group. We as professionals and educators use the summary reports a lot to get the averages and the ranges, but for them to really manage their businesses and compare to where they're at, these benchmark reports are the producer's favorite way to look at things. So that's all I had today. That's some information on our project. And at this point, I would be happy to answer any questions or try to fill you in on anything I didn't cover it this morning.
Okay, thank you, Dale. This is John again. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type those in. We had a question about what the FINBIN URL was again. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, it's www.finbin.umn.edu.
Great, thanks.
I'll be providing that to John, and I think John said he would be able to post that with the presentation.
Great, thanks. And Meg wanted to say that if people want hard copies, they can call 651-201-6012, and they can ask for a copy of the report, and I'll make sure to list that on the web page once we have the webinar recording finished and available on the web. And can they print that report out when they get to that URL, Dale?
When they go to the URL, when they go to Meg's website, it's a PDF, so they can print the whole report off from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture website.
Okay, and we'll make sure we add a link to that on the recording webpage over on eextension.org.
So there's two kinds of reporting. We've got the book that we print every year that we summarize all the data, and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture prints that and has that on their website in summary form. And then the other kinds of reports are the reports we generate from FINBIN as we go.
Great. We'll make sure we put all those links up on the recorded web page on eExtension. Any other questions? Wait just a minute. Okay, I want to thank you for joining the webinar today. If there's anything you missed and you'd like to hear it again or share it with others, it was recorded and will be available with all the slides and the links we talked about at www.extension.org/organic_production. You can also find out about more upcoming webinars. We have many planned this spring, more research ones of this type and more for the general public as well. So please check us out, and thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.